Before we move the knife to marmoset, we wanna position it a bit. Therefore, we wanna duplicate this twice. We wanna hide the original one. Well, let's duplicate first once. Let's make two meshes out of it by combining all of the front and leaving the back. Let's delete our history and everything. Now let's duplicate it and let's turn this one around. Oof. Let's make sure they have the same pivot by turning it. Okay. Now let's freeze and center the pivot on everything. Let's create a ground plane where we're going to position it onto. Let's freeze and center this as well. Now let's take all of those guys, move them a bit and move them up. Now if we go in the FX menu to fields and solvers, we can set them as active. Same to the bottom, we want to set it to passive though. And then we want to add some gravity to the field, to the scene. So let's add a gravity. And now if we want to play it out, this will fall down and position itself basically. Exactly. Then we can just stop it and use those two positions in marmoset as our meshes. So let's just select those. Let's export this and select those two guys and export that, and that's our two meshes. Now that we are done with the mesh and the textures, we're gonna put everything into marmoset and we're gonna create our final renders. So first of all, let's click the still button up here and let's import our meshes. Let's take this one and let's move it down and let's rotate it by 180 degrees. So we can put those two next to each other like this. Looks cool. Then let's put the default material on both of our meshes and let's start putting in our maps. So first we have the normal map, we have the roughness, color and metalness. Few things we want to be careful about. The normal map, we might need to flip, we need to flip the white channel. This is always dependent on how you export it from Substance, either as OpenGL or DirectX. So in our case, we need to flip it. And we want to make sure the sRGB color space is enabled on the texture and nowhere else. Great stuff. Now we want to change our sky. I would go for this house. I really like how strong the lighting is on this one. Now let's add a shadow catcher. As you can see, it's super huge and we don't actually need this big. So let's make it a bit smaller. So let's try 70 or something. Yeah, let's try this. Should be enough because this also improves the quality of the shadow. Cool, but as you can see, there is no shadows right now. And that's because we don't have actual lights. So before we do that, let's change the backdrop to color mode and let's choose nice background color. And now to get real shadows in here, we want to add lights. And the easiest way is to just click on the bright spots in this texture and it creates lights exactly with this color and in this position. So let's get one light in here. Let's get one light in here and let's add one light here. Cool. Now we're already pretty much there, to be honest, because I wanted to do a very simple setup for this asset. What we can do is pump up the overall brightness of the lights and of the HDRI, sorry. This looks great. Okay, then let's create a camera. Let's look for it, camera 1. Let's enable the save frame so we can actually see what the final render will actually look like. And let's choose our crop. Another thing I would like to change is the field of view, because right now it's very wide, not very wide, but it's wide, and I would like to have it more orthographic. So let's pump this up to 55 or something. So it's getting more and more orthographic, as you can see. The higher you go, the more orthographic it looks. So let's go to something like 50, 60. So we have a rather orthographic view on the whole thing. Now if we use Shift and right mouse button, we can see we can rotate the light, and we want to find a nice position where we have a nice lighting on the whole thing. something like this. Yeah, this looks cool. Okay, cool. And if we like the position of the camera, we can just lock it, so we can't move it anymore. Then we want to go into our render settings. If you're using Marmoset 4, by the way, you don't need to do anything. You just enable ray tracing, and that takes care of everything, basically. If you're using Marmoset 3 as me, where ray tracing doesn't exist, you want to add local reflections. You want to enable the GI. You also want to add a little bit of ambient occlusion. For the GI, you want to take a look at the voxels, and you want to make sure to make them just as big as necessary, not like too big and not too small, just as big as necessary, like this. Okay. Can pump up the occlusion details here. If you change the brightness, it just brightens the parts that get affected by GI. So be careful about this one. Something like this. And that's pretty much it. So now what we can do is take a render like this, move our camera to a different position, take another render, and create some nice beauty shots. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line on ArtStation.